Wow. Well, thank you, Howie, for that incredibly clear, powerful, orienting depiction of some of the origins of planetary health and some of its core elements. I think it will be really helpful for us to hold that in our heads over the next day and a half as we dive into some of the details of our discussion. This is my chance to say a quick thank you to our partners, the American Geophysical Union, the Ecological Society of America, the Lancet, the Wellcome Trust, and of course the Rockefeller Foundation. And this meeting is really the climax of a year's fairly frenzied activity by an extraordinarily dedicated and talented team from the Planetary Health Alliance. So I want to acknowledge that team. Sarah Guth, who is our very first employee and who's done absolutely everything we could throw at her, from building a website from scratch to doing basic research to organizing a lot of the logistics of this meeting. Sarah Stone, who is fearlessly leading our educational efforts with vision and energy and creativity. Erica Vedas, who's joined us more recently and heads up our membership outreach and engagement effort with great humor and energy. And our newest member, Perry Scheinbaum, who's here today, who actually doesn't even start until next week, who will be replacing Sarah as she heads off to graduate school in disease ecology. So I'd like to give a hand to that core staff. I also want to say a really special thank you to Amalia Almada, who's our senior program manager and has been our fearless leader for the past year. In addition to her really considerable skills and credentials as a marine scientist, Amalia over the last year has emerged as a great leader and manager. She's guided us through an enormously ambitious year of growth and change with calm, which is amazing, and humor and professionalism. And we feel really, really lucky to have her at the helm of the PHA. It also turns out that Amalia is famous, which I hadn't realized. And I was recently on vacation with my family in Europe and came across, well, I guess I don't have any slides. Huh. Well, okay. I can't show you the picture of Amalia, but it turns out that she is up on a huge billboard in great big red letters that say Amalia in Portugal. So I was very impressed to see how she's gotten around. So I wanted to show you some slides, which I'm going to have to try to show you in words. I have a few minutes to, as sort of my prerogative, to get a little wonky and talk about a little bit of the substance of planetary health and try to complement some of what Howie was saying. As Howie mentioned, we are in the midst of this great acceleration where the sort of sum total of human activity and its ecological footprint has been ballooning at a rate that we've never seen before. And that footprint is actually significantly disrupting most of the natural systems on our planet. And I was going to show you a sort of diagram that we've been working on that essentially suggests that the combination, as Howie suggested, of rapid population growth with even more rapid increases in per capita consumption are driving a whole set of complex environmental changes that include things like global pollution, biodiversity loss, land use change, resource scarcity, climate change, and that sort of nest of ecological drivers that all interact in complex ways with each other are then impacting a set of what we think of as sort of proximate causes of health effects, which are essentially changes in the quality of the air that we breathe, changes in the quality and quantity of food that's available for us to eat, changes in our exposure to infectious disease, changes in the quality, quantity, and timing of fresh water that we have available, and changes in our exposure to natural hazards, and that those proximate causes then have a set of really, really important and increasingly burdensome impacts on global health in just about every dimension of health, from nutritional outcomes to infectious disease, non-communicable disease, mental health impacts, displacement, and conflict. And that in between those sort of proximate causes, oh, look, there it is. Fabulous. So now you can see the picture. Maybe it's already the one that was in your head. That in between these proximate causes and these health impacts are a set of mediating factors that are essentially attributes of a population, and that the extent to which these changes lead to important health outcomes is in part determined by these characteristics of governance, of wealth, of access to philanthropic assistance, of culture and behavior and technology. And that's actually where a lot of the issues of equity that Howie was talking about tend to come in, that the impacts of our changes on these natural systems are actually intensified in important ways for people that lack some of these resources to protect themselves. Another way of thinking about this is the idea that human health, just as we are aware that there are cultural and social and political determinants of health, that there are also ecological determinants of health, and that human health is, we went backwards, that human health is nested in a set of environmental conditions which are currently being transformed. So let me give you an example from infectious disease. So our exposure to infectious diseases is actually mediated by this incredibly complex set of environmental conditions, and things like changes in climate and temperature, changes in water and precipitation patterns, changes in the biological composition of communities, changes in land use and land cover, nutrient enrichment, and its impacts on biology, all affect, and each one of these pathways actually represents a very well-substantiated body of research. These are not conjectural. All impact our exposure to infectious disease in very complex ways. In a second example, nutritional outcomes are mediated, again, by this complex set of environmental conditions where changes in carbon dioxide affect the nutrient quality of our foods. Climate change impacts the quantity and quality of food we produce around the world. Changes in air quality affect food production, water, loss of fisheries, etc. And so there's an enormously complex reliance of nutritional outcomes on these environmental conditions. The urgency, actually, I've got to go back now that I have this slide because I really want to show you Amalia. Oh, look, it barely shows. Okay. Sorry, I couldn't not show you that slide. Okay. No, I've missed my... This is really a little sticky, isn't it? All right, well, never mind. The urgency behind the field of planetary health comes from the recognition that we are fundamentally altering the biophysical conditions that underpin just about every aspect of human health, from global food production to the air we breathe, to the water we drink, to our exposure to infectious diseases, even the habitability of some of the places that we live. There's an urgency to understanding the health implications of how we manage our planet's natural systems, injecting that understanding into our policy and management decisions, as Howie and Michael have emphasized, and rethinking the relationship between our species and our planet's natural systems. And it really is something that's that fundamental that we're talking about, and it's why many of the interventions associated with planetary health actually have very little to do with classic public health interventions and have more to do with culture change and activism and a whole variety of much broader, much more upstream interventions. So we've really organized this meeting over the next day and a half around those three urgencies of the science to policy, and the action. And I think Amalia is going to tell you a little bit more about the program. So thank you.